Welcome, everyone. We are pleased to be here with you today for our session, The Path Less Traveled, Leveraging Consortia Experience for Library Leadership Roles. We want to thank the Charleston Conference for inviting us to do this session, and we want to thank all of you for showing up, and hopefully we'll have a good Q&A at the end of this. So before we start, we have to show you the Code of Conduct slide. If you want more information, you can go to the website or snap the QR code. Okay, so a brief overview of what we're going to do in this session. Our intentions is to be kind of very conversational in nature and talk back and forth about our own experiences, in particular with sitting on a consortium board. Our unique experiences and what we got out of it. So we'll give brief introductions, and then we'll go into the history and our involvement with this particular consortium and what's happening now. And then we're going to kind of interview each other with some questions and go back and forth and give y'all some recommendations and skills that we think are really important to attaining leadership. And then we'll do the Q&A session. How did we get here anyway? So I'll hand it over to Maureen to give a little background.
All right, great. So an intro, yeah. Hi, everybody. I'm Maureen Clements. I'm the Director for SUNY Library Services. I'm really glad to be here and talking with y'all today. And my sort of partner through all of this, Suzanne Margren. I got my start in libraries in the early 2000s, and I came to academia in 2011. I had a job at St. Thomas Aquinas College. While I was there, just a little bit of background, leadership background, while I was there, I was asked to be on the board for the Arts Council of Rockland, which is the county that I live in New York. And that was a really wonderful experience. I gained a lot of valuable knowledge. I went on to become the assistant professor for technical services at Mercy College, which is where I really got involved in Waldo, and now I am at SUNY. So I'm going to turn it over to Suzanne, and she'll introduce herself as well.
Thank you. My name is Suzanne Markran. I am currently the interim executive director of the library at Manhattan University. Prior to that role, I was the director of technical services for 9 years. Prior to that, I was at SUNY Purchase, and prior to that, I was at Mount Sinai School of Medicine. So the past 25 years, I've really worked in academic libraries in different roles. But what these libraries had in common is that they were fairly small with fairly flat structures and really no formal pathway to leadership roles. So I did kind of feel like I had to keep moving on and moving elsewhere to, go along that path if I wanted to kind of move upward in my profession. I have been part of boards before. I've been a member of the ACRL New York, a chapter of ACRL executive board for many years. So that was an excellent experience. And then I got involved in Waldo, and that's the consortium that we're going to talk about with you guys today. Okay. Okay, so before we jump into it, we'll take a step back. We assume that everyone knows what a library consortium is, but if not, here's a few very brief definitions of what a consortium is. They do take on many different roles and purposes, which could be interesting. And if you're not sure, you should research your own library to see how many consortia your library is a member of, because probably you're a member of more than one. They can be very small in nature. They can be geographic. They can be focused on a single, idea or content or collections. They can be national, international. So a wide range is what consortia do, and a lot of times consortia work together and band together, and kind of we've seen that a lot in our neck of the woods anyway, as the roles change. One of the definitions that we really like is the third one here. The bedrock principle of how much consortia operate is that libraries can accomplish more together than alone. So yes, we totally agree with that. And then on the next slide, we just have a list of what typically what consortia can do. A lot of times it's licensing and content negotiation. They can, do a lot more if more libraries band together and have more negotiation with the vendors on getting better deals. So electronic resource procurement, which is what our consortium is big into, shared technology, research sharing, professional development. Often they will offer classes and such. And then other things like open access, scholarly communication, consulting, and hosting. So just to name a few. Okay, I'll hand it over to Maureen.
Okay, great. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the origins of Waldo and some of the history of Waldo to kind of give a context as to our experience. So Waldo is the Westchester Academic Library Directors Organization that was formed in the early 80s. Back in the 80s, there was a lot more libraries, academic libraries, than there are today. And a lot of the library directors had very similar concerns. There was a lot of religious schools in the area. Many of the original members were from religious schools. They semi-regularly met in person, had coffee, talked about best practices, and they really focused on the electronification of information. And at one point, this is back, I think maybe more in the 90s, they developed a mission statement, which for Waldo is the purpose of this organization shall be to share resources among its members and to promote library services in Westchester County, in the New York metropolitan region, and in the nation at large. So that image is from Wikipedia, and that little red dot there in the bottom corner of the state of New York is where Westchester is located. When Suzanne and I were doing research for this, we did come across this incredible article from the 80s, 1988, April 10th to be exact, entitled A Computer Link for Libraries. And this article goes on to describe the start of the consortia that really formed Waldo. Westchester has become one of the counties in the United States, first counties in the United States, to have a computerized central information network that links county government departments, a public library, and academic libraries. And that was PALS, which is we have the acronym, it's the Automated Library Network. And Waldo was one of the founding members of that. So that really solidified Waldo. As Waldo grew and they developed PALS, they hired an executive director to assist with procurement because in addition to having a shared library service, they also did purchasing of electronic resources. And they were looking to increase the buying power and also provided lots of network opportunities and a larger pool of resources. Around that same time, the Waldo board decided to create an associate level of consortium membership, and that really broadened the network and allow it to expand. This image that you're looking at is called Waldo's Total Expenses. This is some documentation that we found back while we were doing research for this presentation. And we discovered that within 4 years, between 1997 and 2000, Waldo's expenses grew from approximately $225,000 to nearly $2.25 million. And so that's exponential growth as we see consortia just growing through the 90s and the early 2000s. Waldo filed status in 2000 at 501c3 status, which is nonprofit. And we contracted with an independent procurement organization to manage the administrative services. At that time, we also created a limited membership, which really grew Waldo. So we had about 800 members in Waldo at one point, people coming in and out, schools coming in and out. And we were continuing with PALS, which is the Project for Automated Library Systems. But then in 2008, the staff, with the recession and everything that happened, we really saw a lot of staff contraction across libraries, budget cuts, retirements. It was really a very challenging time. Our charter libraries were closing and converging. New York NILink also dissolved. And the governance that Waldo had in place really became a little less sustainable, and there was a lot of staff burnout. We had large committees, but there weren't as many people to attend those committees. At that time, too, we implemented open access, COHA, and uh, we did a lot of work on that. And finally, I think the landscape is changing too, and that vendors are trying to undercut the consortia to really try to make as much money as they could. So. And then our involvement, I'm just going to tell a little bit about my involvement, and then I'm going to turn it over to Suzanne, who's going to keep the flow of story going. But I got involved with Waldo on the Technical Services Committee, and that committee met regularly. They talked about a variety of different concerns, including COHA, new cataloging challenges, things like that. And it was a real joy because I got to meet a lot of librarians around the state, and it was a wonderful networking opportunity. So I really, really appreciated that. And I served on that committee for a really long time, so many years, and it was wonderful. So now I'm going to turn it over to Suzanne, who's going to talk to y'all about her involvement.
Yeah, so around the same time, actually a little earlier than Maureen, I got involved with the Electronic Resources Committee, um, mainly because my director at the time had been kind of on and off past president of Waldo. Um, as Maureen mentioned, there's a board, and a lot of these board members had been on and off the board for many years because we were kind of a small group of the original members, and the board had to be directors. But I got involved in one of these committees, which I thought was extremely useful, especially working in a small institution and being the only person that does what I do. I find it super important to go outside of your organization and meet others who have the same job. So we would come together maybe once a month to talk about new electronic resources coming up. What are we using? What do we like? How do we keep statistics? What tools are we using? What would we recommend? And then once a year we would do like a vendor showcase, and we would ask vendors to come, like 3 or 4 of them, and have like a day long or half a day event. And a lot of people would attend, and it was quite popular. So that was kind of the charge of what our committee did. Over time, both of our committees kind of saw waning membership. There weren't as many people, I guess, in tech services, not a shock, people wanting to attend these meetings. And we also discovered that we were having similar discussions about similar tools, and then we decided, well, why don't we just join forces? So we held some group meetings, and then we officially transitioned to a joint working group or interest group called the Collection Services Interest Group, and we disbanded those other committees. And then we met like that for a few years, I guess. In 2017, we actually joined the board. We were asked by Maureen's director at the time, and the board, again, it was kind of struggling. They didn't have a lot of people to choose from, or their restrictions of having directors. But at this point, Maureen and I were both in like assistant director positions in our jobs, and they deemed us okay to be on the board, which was great and fascinating, and we had a lot to learn, which we discovered. So we took a good year or so. We asked a lot of questions. We tried to figure out how is this board, what is the board governance like? There was no onboarding documents. Again, a lot of these people had been on the board for many, many years, and they were kind of used to doing things how they always did it. So here we were, the newbies. So then in 2018, we, Waldo, in particular, our business partner, our procurement agent, was a victim of email compromise. So it was kind of between, like, in the name of Waldo, but it was compromised in their systems, and so we're all kind of tied together. And that was kind of the big wake up. It was a big deal. It was a lot of money, and it was kind of shocking. It's not that shocking because this happens all the time, but it was just something that we weren't prepared for. We didn't quite know how to handle it because we were being told one thing by our business partners. So we decided at that point that we needed to ask more questions and we needed to get a better handle on our own finances. So we contacted legal and we asked them to review all of our contracts and, just realizing that some of our contracts were like almost 20 years old. So there was, some that had very little information, some that needed updating, needed strengthening for sure. And then it led us to really look inward and look at how we're handling our own business, since ultimately the board is in charge of the organization. Okay, and so everything takes time. Some of the changes we made because of this is increased communications, and luckily, I mean, we look back on it now. This happened during COVID, and so we were all at home, and we had more time to hold more meetings. So it really worked out to do all of this work. Again, we're not being paid; we were volunteers, but we really utilized the time of being isolated in our homes, especially during the beginning COVID time. So we implemented board only, Waldo Google Drive and new email addresses. We changed the term of the presidency to 2 years because 1 year wasn't long enough. We formed subcommittees like a finance subcommittee and a communication subcommittee so people could really focus on particular tasks at hand and communicate with the particular people outside of Waldo. We changed the structure of board meetings, so we would have board only. We would invite our business partner to part of the meeting, and then the board would have a board only meeting. And as I mentioned before, we relied a lot on our legal counsel. We also hired an accountant, our own accountant, to look at everything for us. We were in talks more with our auditor, who we had previously, to make sure our taxes and documents were up to speed. And then we reached out to other consortia to just ask them, kind of governance type questions, and as well as Waldo members and vendors. And then all of this resulted in the decision to change our business partner, or our procurement agent that we had worked with for many, many years. That was a tough decision, and it took a lot of work to do, but that was a big change. So next slide. Excuse me. So since then, and that was a whole new contract with this company, not renewing a contract with our existing partner. We over a few years moved all of the business aspects to the new partner, and during this time we had to have multiple meetings with all of our constituents. So the members, the vendors, people who had to, we were kind of ending the business part of it, and they had to move to Lyrasis and under new contracts and such. So it was, some of the talks were quite tough. I mean, people had been with us for many, many years, and it was kind of fascinating, and that was really hard work, I would say. So, and then the ultimate decision is to dissolve. So we don't need to exist anymore. Times were changing. The board couldn't handle all of this work being a volunteer board, and our members and vendors would be better off served with someone else to do the work for them. So we've been since then working to dissolve with New York State, closing out all of our accounts, collecting archival material, old meeting minutes, old documents from the people that we know, like past presidents. We've been driving to people's places of work and hauling out boxes, so that's been interesting. And we've also been figuring out ways to preserve the history of the organization. And luckily, we already have some documents in an archive, and we hope to work with them more in the future and give them more of the documents. That's kind of the ongoing. So we're not done yet. We're still working on this, which is kind of crazy, but it's been exciting, to say the least.
All right, so that was a really great rundown, Suzanne. I know that we've been through we've been through a lot. It's a lot of work and it's taken a long time. I think we would say that we started this process in 2019, really. So it's been almost 6 years now. Um, so a long time. So this part, yeah. We're going to ask each other questions about the process and the things that we learned along the way, and we'll just take turns asking each other questions, and then of course we'll have some questions later in the end for you after this session, after this recording. Um, Okay, so Suzanne, how has your experience serving on the board of a consortia affected or changed your career path or your professional visibility?
Great question. Um, I think that's the whole reason we're doing this presentation in this session. I am where I am because of it. I'm 100% sure. Or I'm here in a interim director position earlier than I would have been because of this experience. Because I got so much hands-on leadership experience that stuff that I didn't even know that I needed to learn, or and maybe I didn't need it, but it really helped me in my current role and to secure this position. And I think the professional visibility has to do with all of the wonderful people that we work with and working closely with a lot of library leaders in our area who have been such huge supporters of us as we're going through these hard changes and the hard work, but also advocates for our career paths. And when I stepped into this new position, they were the first people to congratulate me. So it's been really amazing. So highly recommend it. It's a lot of work for to do all that we did, but again, we had a little extra time during COVID. But yeah, it's been an amazing thing. So, how about you, Maureen?
Yeah. Just to clarify, so I think one of the things that really, just to mention, from 2019 to 2021, I was the board president, and Suzanne has been the board president since, which is have to give you so much credit because you're really taking us to the end. It's like this marathon of work. So, um, but I think the way that this has really changed my career path is that it gave me a lot of confidence in order to in my abilities because of all of the changes we made and the way we were able to lead the board into these decisions and discussions. And also it enabled me to network. And so that's how I met the folks who are working at my current job at SUNY. I likely would have never had that relationship there in order to find out about this position and really and now thriving in that position. So really appreciate that. And also it gave, like I said, it gave me a lot of confidence in making decisions, I think too, right? And seeking that out. So, all right.
Yeah, no, I totally concur. Confidence is huge. I don't think I would have had that much if I hadn't been in that position where you kind of, you're forced. If you're the president, you kind of have to make those.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And this leads us into our next question, which is,
Yeah.
what leadership competencies have we gained by serving on this board, or just any board? And what wouldn't you have attained that you wouldn't have attained elsewhere? So,
Um, yeah, just off the top of my head, I think a lot of like business sense, business, what it takes to run essentially, a board and a business, everything that was involved and all these outside people that we had to communicate with, accountants and looking at spreadsheets and, um, and the lawyers and looking at licenses and it's kind of fascinating work that I wouldn't have gotten on my job. Um, and I think patience is a huge one. I feel like I should have patience, but I think sitting on this board and it takes so long to get things done. Um, you have to have patience and working with all different types of people. Kind of the human aspect is super important for leadership and
that's right.
communicating with all these different people. people.
And I think too, when we think about what some of the things that we've been through, resiliency, because every time we turned around there was another challenge, right? So we, oh, okay, all right, okay, now we have another challenge. So like just it, and also, steadfastness and getting the work done, right? I think that try not to get discouraged is really, just okay, well, here's another step and we're going to continue through that. So um just perseverance and also the confidence to be able to make some, certain decisions. I think when I think about, 6 years, we're still persevering through this, you know, it's a lot of work. So, um, those are, I think, some of the definite competencies, and also communication skills, I think, it's really leveled up those communication skills and being able to talk about hard and difficult things. That sometimes it's good to have those conversations, right? Because that's where change kind of happens. So
Yeah,
needed change, I would say. Yeah.
needed change. Yes, everything has to change.
Yeah.
And we had to do it at the right time, and I think we did. And I think the professional visibility comes into that a lot too, because having that, um, having the conversations with all these people, including vendors and people at other consortia, um, you know, getting to know them and then getting to know other people through them. Like you said, that's basically how you got your job. It's really increased our visibility among different groups. All right, you might have answered this because we had this conversation, but what is there one like a most difficult or most satisfying aspect of board membership?
Um, I think I would say, uh, it was very, I loved the challenge. It was, there was several things, I love a good challenge, right? And that was very satisfying, but it was also very difficult, right? Because that's why they call it challenges. I think that one aspect of this that I was thinking about was, while we were making these decisions, one of the votes that we thought might go one way ended up going another way. And it really gave us time to sit back and reflect and listen and make changes. And I think that listening to the constituents, that's what it really taught me when I think about board membership, like being able to incorporate everybody's positions and then collaborate on those positions and really make changes, because there's a lot of power in groups, right? And I think when you're all collaborating on an idea, everyone brings something really important to the table. So that's very, very satisfying. I think that to me, that was one of the most satisfying aspects of being on the board. And
Yeah,
you?
and I just to go off of that too. I just think of this different people on the board at that time and all the discussions that we had, and people on the board were, having second thoughts about certain things, and it's just like having, giving everyone the opportunity to speak and to, let everyone know what's, their viewpoints, and then we would just sit back and we'd take everything into account, and a lot of things, here comes the patience again, it would take longer, and that's okay because we needed to get everyone on the same page and, tweak things if we needed to, and just take our time to get it right. And I think that was a very important thing. And I think the most satisfying is really seeing this. Like, again, we're not dissolved yet, but seeing it to fruition. And uh, once we're there, it'll be immensely satisfying. And we know all the behind the scenes work that we did, and it's okay if not everyone does. You know, they don't need to know all the drama and hair pulling and a lot of laughter as well.
Oh, yeah. Many meetings, many meetings.
Many meetings. Uh, so yeah, I totally agree with that. So I think that was kind of like you said, the most difficult and the most satisfying aspect of board membership.
Great. All right. So, what advice would you give to someone seeking leadership opportunities outside of their current position?
Luckily, we have a slide for that.
We do have a slide for that. Are we ready?
Yeah.
right. So I'll take the first two and let Suzanne finish up the presentation. So I think that our recommendations are one thing is to always engage in discovery, right? Ask questions, be curious, listen. Those are really, really important skills that we learned. I think that story we just mentioned, being able to really account for everyone's viewpoints. Sometimes you can't do that in a leadership role, but it's really important that you try and you make those attempts because the consensus of a group is always, there's always somebody who's got a great point about something. Also learn about your roles and responsibilities. I think when we joined the board, there wasn't any onboarding documentation, and that's not that's I think that that's just a part of the circumstance, of the board. But it's really good to ask those questions when you are going to be finding yourself in on a position, or if you've been asked to be on a board, you want to know what you're getting yourself into. I think that that's really important. And then you want to engage in evaluation. Am I ready for this role? Is this something that I really have the time to devote? What is, and then evaluating also when you're in this role, evaluating your mission, your bylaws, your requirements, going over those frequently and regularly to making sure that you're addressing concerns and issues, reviewing your workflows and your governance. Do you have everything that you need, or all of the paperwork? Do you have auditors, accountants, all of that very interesting stuff, right? We learned a lot there. But I also think evaluating what your members want. That's really important too, because as a representative of board, you're really speaking for many other people, really, and you are you have to think of their concerns as well. So it's really it's a great position. I really enjoyed it, and I'm going to turn it over to Suzanne to finish up. Great.
Okay, so a couple other things that we want to mention is engaging in follow through, implementation, or the real the work of it. So now that you're on the board, volunteer for subcommittees, get yourself in there, get dirty, ask questions again, make changes, and be confident. The confidence will be gained over time as you become more familiar. But also, communicate and be transparent with everyone, whether it's the meetings, whether it's the members, whether you're putting together outside meetings and whatnot. Be transparent, we think, is a total key, and be flexible when plans change because they always will. And finally, engage in self-care. So important, as we mentioned over and over. It is a lot of work. I think our situation was unique and maybe more work, and not everyone would have taken that on. But be careful not to overdo it. Do some self-reflection. Understand why are you taking on these roles? What are you going to gain out of it? Make sure you're not doing too much. Make sure you're listening, communicating with others who are in similar roles to you, other board members, and then just be extra careful of that, burnout. I hate to say it, but it's very easy to go down that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
healthcare is very important.
Yeah. And one thing too, one last point, when we had talked about this yesterday when we were preparing, but the idea and the concept of going easy on yourself, and, the concept of imposter syndrome, right? I think we came into this role not knowing, knowing nothing, right? And I think it's okay to not know. And you have to go easy on yourself and say, I don't know all the answers. And that helps you because that gives you something that you can look for. Oh, I'll ask somebody, right? And that's where you get the networking, and that's where you get the collaboration. And so that's part of the self-care, right? But okay.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Slides. So thank you again, and we're looking forward to chatting with you now.
Great.